They started laughing the moment she walked into the interview room, but 10 minutes later, not a single person in that room could look her in the eyes. Before we begin, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that true strength is often hidden behind the faces people underestimate. And trust me, by the end of this story, you'll never judge someone by their appearance again. The waiting hall of the Provincial Civil Service Commission was crowded with candidates. Some were revising notes, some were discussing current affairs, and others were nervously checking their documents again and again. It was the final interview stage for one of the most prestigious government jobs in the country. Hundreds had applied, only a handful had reached this point. Among the candidates sat a young woman named Aisha. She was 24 years old and wore a simple, faded shalwar kameez. Her shoes looked worn out. The handle of her old handbag was stitched together with thread. Unlike the others, she wasn't carrying expensive files or neatly printed portfolios. She held a single folder that had clearly been used many times before. A few candidates sitting nearby noticed her. One young man looked at her clothes and smirked. "Are you here for the interview?" he asked. Aisha nodded politely. The man exchanged amused looks with his friends. "Interesting. I thought this was the civil service interview, not a charity office." Several people laughed. Aisha lowered her eyes but said nothing. The truth was that she had heard such comments all her life. She had grown up in a small village where opportunities were scarce and poverty was everywhere. Her father had worked as a daily wage laborer. Some days he earned enough money to feed the family. Other days they slept hungry. When Aisha was 12 years old, her father suffered a severe injury while working at a construction site. The accident left him unable to do heavy labor. Overnight, the family's fragile financial situation collapsed. Medical bills piled up. Debt increased. Relatives who once visited frequently stopped coming. People who had praised the family disappeared when help was needed. Aisha's mother started sewing clothes late into the night to keep food on the table. Many people advised Aisha to leave school. Education is for rich people, they told her. You need to think about survival. But Aisha refused. Every morning she walked several kilometers to school. Sometimes she studied under streetlights because electricity at home was unreliable. Sometimes she borrowed books because she couldn't afford her own. Sometimes she skipped meals so her younger siblings could eat. Yet she never stopped learning. Years passed. Her determination became stronger than her circumstances. She graduated near the top of her class. Then she earned admission to a university through a scholarship. Even there, life wasn't easy. While many students focused entirely on their studies, Aisha balanced multiple responsibilities. She tutored children after classes. She worked part-time in a library. She helped her mother financially. She sent money home whenever possible. There were nights when exhaustion brought tears to her eyes. But every time she thought about quitting, she remembered her father's words. People can take away money, opportunities, and comfort. But knowledge is something nobody can steal. Those words became her motivation. Years later, after completing her degree with distinction, Aisha decided to attempt the civil service examination. Everyone knew how difficult it was. Thousands competed. Only the best succeeded. Many candidates came from wealthy families, elite schools, and influential backgrounds. Aisha came from none of those things. Yet she prepared with relentless dedication. For nearly 2 years she studied before sunrise and after midnight. She read newspapers daily. She analyzed government policies. She memorized laws and constitutional provisions. She practiced interview questions endlessly. When the written exam results were announced, she passed. Then came the psychological assessment. She passed again. Now only the final interview remained. As she sat in the waiting hall, hearing people laugh at her appearance, old memories resurfaced. Memories of humiliation. Memories of rejection. Memories of being told she wasn't good enough. But experience had taught her something important. People's opinions were temporary. Character was permanent. One by one, candidates entered the interview room. Some emerged confident. Others looked disappointed. Finally, an attendant opened the door. Miss Aisha Khan. She stood up. Several candidates glanced at her with amused expressions. One whispered loudly enough for others to hear. This should be interesting. More laughter followed. Aisha quietly walked toward the interview room. Inside sat 5 panel members. All were senior officials. They had conducted interviews for decades. The chairman adjusted his glasses and looked at her file. Please take a seat. She thanked him and sat down. The interview began normally. Questions about education. Questions about public administration. Questions about current affairs. Aisha answered calmly. The panel members exchanged brief looks. Her responses were precise. Thoughtful. Confident. Then the chairman leaned back. Tell us something about yourself that isn't mentioned in your application. Aisha paused. The room became silent. Then she spoke. I learned leadership while carrying water from a village well. The panel looked surprised. She continued. I learned crisis management when my family couldn't afford food for an entire week. Negotiation skills came from convincing creditors to give my parents more time. Time management came from balancing studies, work, and family responsibilities. Public service became important to me because I saw what happens when government systems fail ordinary people. The room remained quiet. No one interrupted. For the first time, the panel wasn't simply hearing prepared interview answers. They were hearing lived experience. One member asked, "What is the biggest challenge facing our country today?" Many candidates had answered this question with statistics and textbook explanations. Aisha answered differently. The biggest challenge isn't lack of resources. The panel listened carefully. It's the gap between policy and reality. She continued. Many decisions are made in offices by people who never experience the problems they're trying to solve. If you want effective governance, decision-makers must understand how ordinary citizens live. A panel member leaned forward. And how would you achieve that? Aisha replied immediately. By listening more than speaking. The answer surprised everyone. She continued. Citizens often know their problems better than officials. Effective governance begins when leaders stop assuming they already know everything. The chairman slowly nodded. Then came the question that changed everything. One panel member looked directly at her. You've faced poverty your entire life. If selected, you'll suddenly gain status and authority. How can we be sure power won't change you? Aisha smiled softly. Then she answered. Because poverty already taught me what power is. The panel became silent. She continued. Power isn't the ability to control others. It's the ability to improve someone's life. My mother sewing clothes until dawn was power. My father sacrificing his health for our future was power. My teachers who educated students without expecting rewards were powerful. If I ever forget those lessons, then I won't deserve this position. The room fell completely silent. One panel member slowly put down his pen. Another stopped writing notes. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the chairman asked one final question. Why should we select you? Most candidates responded by listing qualifications. Achievements. Skills. Certificates. Aisha took a deep breath. Then she said something nobody expected. You shouldn't select me because I suffered. The panel looked intrigued. You shouldn't select me because I'm poor. She continued. You shouldn't select me because my story sounds inspiring. The chairman leaned forward. Aisha's voice remained steady. You should select me only if you believe I can serve people honestly and effectively. If another candidate can do that better than me, choose them. The room was completely still. Then she added one final sentence. But if you're looking for someone who understands what citizens endure when systems fail, I understand because I've lived it. No one spoke for several seconds. The chairman finally smiled. Thank you, Miss Aisha. She stood up, thanked the panel, and walked out. Back in the waiting hall, some candidates immediately approached her. How was it? Aisha simply smiled. It went well. Hours later, the final results were announced. Candidates gathered around the notice board. The crowd pushed forward anxiously. Names filled the page. Then someone shouted, "She's first." People looked closer. At the very top of the list stood one name. Aisha Khan. The same girl they had laughed at. The same girl whose clothes they mocked. The same girl they had dismissed before knowing her. For a moment, nobody spoke. The young man who had joked about charity offices stared at the list in disbelief. Aisha herself stood frozen. Tears filled her eyes. Not because she had defeated anyone. Not because she had proven critics wrong. But because she remembered every sacrifice that had brought her there. Her mother's sleepless nights. Her father's pain. The borrowed books. The empty stomachs. The endless struggles. All of it suddenly felt worthwhile. She called home immediately. Her mother answered. The moment Aisha spoke, both of them began crying. Neither could form complete sentences. Words weren't necessary. They both understood. Years of hardship had finally produced hope. Months later, Aisha began her service as a government officer. Unlike many officials, she never forgot where she came from. She visited remote villages. She listened to citizens patiently. She treated every person with dignity. Whether rich or poor. Educated or illiterate. Influential or unknown. And whenever new recruits asked how she had succeeded, she always gave the same answer. Never waste time proving people wrong. Spend that time proving yourself right. Because the people who laughed at her appearance had only seen her clothes. They hadn't seen the determination behind her eyes. They hadn't seen the nights she studied while others slept. They hadn't seen the sacrifices hidden beneath her quiet smile. And that is the lesson this story leaves us with. The world often judges people in seconds. But character is revealed over years. Never underestimate someone because of how they look, where they come from, or what they possess. The strongest people are often fighting battles you cannot see. The brightest minds are often hidden behind the simplest appearances. And sometimes, the person everyone laughs at today becomes the person everyone admires tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs encouragement today. Remember, your circumstances do not define your future. Your determination does.